the IATF 16949 podcast, where we talk about all things automotive. Find us on our channel at youtube.com/IATF 16949 auditing, or visit our website at www.iatfglobaloversight.org. This is the IATF 16949 podcast.
Welcome to the IATF 16949 podcast. I'm Paul Hardiman, subject matter expert for SMMT and IAOB. In this episode, we'll be talking to Devon Gage, Program Manager at the IAOB, and Noel Keeley, IATF Oversight Manager at Society of Motor Manufacture and Traders, about specific requirements related to IATF 16949. We'll also be answering some questions from our YouTube channel comments related to this subject. We hope you enjoy this podcast. So now let's have a look at some of the questions that have come on the YouTube channel that I think really relate back to either the IATF 16949 requirements or the core tools that are included within IATF 16949. And Devon, let's get a little bit technical. Measurement system analysis. So if an organization has on their control plan that they're going to use a visual camera inspection system, the viewer question was, do they have to do a gauge R&R for that camera inspection system?
You know, Paul, this is a good question. And funny enough, I think we just filmed some more in-depth videos that will answer this question coming up. Those should be released sometime in April or May timeframe. But to answer your question, no. MSA has to be done because it's called out. But it could be using a reference standard to monitor bias and stability. It does not have to be GR&R.
Right, so I think that's a key point then. So keep watching the videos. We are going to be covering MSA in more detail and indeed auditing the automotive core tools in the next series. So watch out for this. But I think Devon's been very clear that the IATF requirement says that for each type of measuring test equipment system on the control plan, MSA has to be done, but it does not have to be gauge R&R. And in fact, for a visual camera system where there's very little human intervention, probably doing a bias and stability study would probably be the best way of addressing that. Now, a comment against some of the videos. In the auditor in the video appears not to be talking to the operators. Is that okay in certain situations?
Yeah, no, this is an interesting question, Paul. The questioner clearly has some in-depth experience of the rules and the impact different languages have on the audit and translation time and all of the above. So yeah, an interesting question, and it's worth just probably giving some context. I know IATF over the years have been quite prescriptive about the amount of audit time that has to be spent in the manufacturing environment. In other words, outside of a conference room. So IATF already kind of require audits to happen, in the manufacturing area, and ideally in the processes where the activity is occurring. So not just for manufacturing, but for non-manufacturing processes, we always try to, where it's practical, to ensure that the audit happens really where the work happens to make it as meaningful as possible. But I think in some cases there will be situations where it might not be appropriate to start talking to an auditor who is midway through something that then could have ramifications on producing non-conforming products. So as always, it's a bit case by case, but yes, we encourage the third-party auditors to engage with the people that are doing the work that they are auditing, where it's kind of safe and practical to do so.
Yeah, and I guess those listeners that are working as internal or second-party auditors, the same principle will apply, that you're trying to gather objective evidence from the people that are performing the work, if it's safe to do so, and we're not going to produce non-conforming product by disrupting the operator, and maybe if they could injure themselves, I guess, or they could damage the product.
Yeah.
So no, I think it's clear.
Yeah, and I think with auditing, we're looking almost to sort of penetrate each level of the organisation. So we can't just rely on hearing from, management, for example. We have to hear from the people doing the work to be able to make a decision about whether the situation is conforming.
Where third-party auditors have to spend 1/3 minimum of the audit time in manufacturing.
Yeah.
The expectation, you can't really go all of that time and not talk to operators, because they're the people that are performing the work.
Correct.
Yeah. And remember, the videos that we film are very short extracts of audits. They're not meant to simulate a full audit. So it might appear on the particular extract that the auditor isn't interfacing with the operators. That's not to say that in the big audit, that they haven't. Yeah. Devon, the next question is about setting quality objectives. And obviously, one thing that is really important to the customer is on-time delivery. The question is, does the target have to be set at 100% on-time delivery?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question there. But first, one, does your customer require it? If your customer requires 100% on-time delivery, then yes, the target needs to be 100%. Now, if it's not stated in any of the CSRs, then it's the organization's responsibility to set the targets, and how those are set need to be outlined and defined by the organization. So is 100% appropriate? It depends.
Yeah. And I think the key point you're making, Devon, is that the organization, when they set their quality objectives, have to at least understand and review any customer-specific requirements related to that, and incorporate those customer-related objectives and targets into their planning for setting the quality objectives. So I think that's the key point. Yeah. Let's do Niall next then. So in the video that we did about auditing quality objectives, a subscriber said that they would dig in more deeply to how the objectives are set, how they're communicated within the organization. Do we think that is fair feedback from the subscriber based upon that short video?
Well, again, it's a great comment, and it again clearly made by someone who has lots of experience of auditing. But to your earlier point, Paul, these are let's say fabricated. We're trying to create a video scenario, and it's difficult to fully replicate a full audit scenario, but absolutely the key thing, auditing objectives and performance is a fundamental part of auditing any process.
Good. Okay, no, thank you. Devon, I want to move on to the maintenance process, which obviously is key in many organizations for trying to keep in the equipment in optimum condition. And the question is then, if we were doing an audit and an organization wasn't monitoring mean time between failure and mean time to repair, would that automatically be a non-conformity?
No. Those would not be an automatic non-conformity. Their references are such as, they're not requirements or shall statements.
Yeah.
So there'd be no reason to write those.
No, and then in my involvement with TPM, they're good measures, but I think what you're saying is the auditor can't say an organization has to measure those, but they do have to have maintenance objectives, which is, I think, the base of the requirement. Right. Good.
And if it was called out in one of those objectives as part of their QMS, then obviously that's a different question.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Now, back to the application then of IATF 16949 in the semiconductor industry. So a proportion of the 88,000 certified clients will be organizations in the semiconductor industry. And they're saying that some of the IATF requirements, for example, 10.2.4, are really difficult to apply. Is there any consideration being given to the concerns of some of the industry sectors about the way that some of the IATF requirements are worded?
Again, this is a great point, and actually, and Devin might be able to talk more on this, but I know AIAG have kind of set up a working group made up of semiconductor manufacturing organisations, and I know from my experience in the what we call the systematic review group at IATF, where we review potential changes to requirements, that group have made some proposals. So I would say specifically on semiconductors, there is an active work group in the background sort of within the AIAG that is putting forward their thoughts and ideas about how some of the IATF requirements could be made more, semiconductor friendly, if that's the right word.
Yeah, and I guess I have got some sympathy for you guys and IATF that almost it will become, I think, maybe in the next revision of IATF, would there be any form of sector supplements? Because I know historically that's the way that some of the automotive schemes went. Because now there's such a diversity, isn't there, from bulk materials to semiconductors, to safety critical products, very electronic products, that it's very difficult to write requirements that can be applied in the same way across all these different areas within the automotive supply chain. So I guess it's watch this space.
And particularly, the things that spring to mind are sort of first offs and last offs, which is a very sort of traditional way of checking a part, which might not lend itself to those other sectors, semiconductors, bulk materials. And there are many other examples of requirements. But I agree, Paul, that the revision 2, I hope will be more, will speak more to all of those different, let's say, categories of.
Yeah, so it's watch this space on that one.
Watch this space, yeah.
Yeah. Devin, in SPC and use of statistical data, I don't know whether you guys pick up. I think there is a lot of confusion out there between the different process capability indices. I think the automotive industry typically use PPK and CPK. And the question really relates back to that. What are the differences between CPK and PPK?
You know, Paul, I got to plug our future series here. They're going to answer a lot of these questions again. It's coming out. We're looking forward to it. But to answer the question, the difference is the way the standard deviation is calculated, right? So PPK uses the data points, whereas CPK uses an estimate based on subgroup ranges.
Good. Yeah, and I think a lot of people are not seeing that difference and understanding the difference. And obviously an organization has to understand the customer requirements related to which process capability indices they should be using and what the acceptance value is. Obviously in IATF 16949, whereas it talks about process capability, it doesn't specifically talk about which indices an organization has to use. Yeah. So, I think that's watch the future series, as Devin said. I can specifically remember one that we've filmed gets into a detailed discussion on that. So please keep watching. Please keep subscribing to the channel. Niall, a specific question in one of our remote audit videos was about if a project is being delayed, and there has not been any communication with the customer on the delay in the project, would that be a non-conformity? And if so, which requirement do we think it could be a non-conformity against?
So, yes. So we would link this, Paul, back to 8321 design and development planning, that covers the ensuring that design planning meets all stakeholder requirements. And if you look in the IATF standard, it specifically calls out project management, and in that it refers to some of the norms that we see in the world of automotive project management, namely APQP and maturity level assurance as the two main approaches to project management, which would include timing issues, any problems associated with project timing.
Yeah, and I think also we can always go back to ISO requirements. So I think ISO requirement 8.2.1 also talks about customer communication, in this case, communication about a project delay.
Yeah.
So it's really good to know that people are watching the detail of the videos. And really critiquing them, because that was the intent, that people are using these to help continue to develop their auditors, whether they be CB auditors or whether they be internal or second-party auditors. Yeah. Niall, there a comment about auditing of customer complaints. I think that the person who viewed the video, I think it's twigged with them the importance of doing good audit preparation. So can you help us on this then? That do we think auditors should spend some time in their audit preparation understanding whether there's been customer-related issues?
So yes is the answer. And yeah, it's difficult. Obviously, for a third-party audit, there is an expectation that the client will provide information to the certification body that includes, let's say, customer complaint related issues. But I think generally, if we're talking about problem solving and customer complaints, 10.2.3 and 10.2.6 are probably the most relevant.
Yeah, so 10.2.3, and we see that is number one, I think. Major non-conformance in audits relates to problem solving. Yeah. And then 10.2.6 about customer complaint and field failure test analysis.
Yeah.
So I think you're saying that they are relevant requirements, but the key point is that an auditor shouldn't go in cold.
Absolutely.
They should be reviewing performance as part of their audit preparation. Yeah. And I think that equally applies to all types of audit, whether they be internal, second party or third party. Yeah. Devon, the next question again was related to somebody watching the detail of a video, that if a certified IATF client uses a distributor, does the distributor have to be ISO 9001 certified? And if they weren't, would it be a non-conformity? Now, this is a really difficult question, I think.
Yeah, there are so many different variables in this question that it's tough to answer and just give a blanket answer, right? And I know that's probably not what this specific person was looking for. But on a case-by-case basis, if there's ever a question, they can always have their CB contact the relevant oversight office, or you can always submit IOB.org. We have our contact us. We will take any queries that you guys might have, look into the specifics of the situation, and be able to provide answers. But just a random question with not a whole lot of detail, I really don't have an answer.
It's difficult to give a black and white answer. Yeah, I understand that. But I think this is something that maybe there needs to be some further clarification as the IATF requirements are developed, because these distributors are important, I think, within the supply chain. And from my experience, Niall, I don't know whether you agree with me, there can be distributors that just buy and sell product. They don't stock the product. And then there can be distributors that buy the product and sell that product on.
Yeah.
And I think it's a bit of a grey area in the requirement.
And obviously it goes back to the kind of eligibility discussion we had earlier, that, if a distributor isn't actually doing any value-added manufacturing, then they're not eligible for IATF certification. But this is really saying if a certified client uses a distributor, so
they're buying product through a distributor, but maybe the product comes from an ISO 9001 or an IATF certified company, but they're buying and selling it, and in some cases they're stocking the product. I don't think it's black and white. Even with the sanction interpretation 8, I still don't think it's absolutely black and white whether they have to be or don't have to be, because this could be one person in an office or even working from home, or it could be a large warehouse where they're getting the product in, storing it, and then supplying that product on.
That's a good question.
It's something to feed back. But as Devon said, there are mechanisms that anybody can raise, and certification bodies can raise questions to the relevant oversight offices. Good question.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, follow us or visit our YouTube channel to watch more content from us at IATF 16949 Auditing. And don't forget, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments of the relevant video. The IATF 16949 podcast, where we talk about all things automotive. Find us on our channel at youtube.com/IATF 16949 Auditing, or visit our website at www.iatfglobaloversight.org. This is the IATF 16949 podcast.